and your willingness to circle heads and learn some and from Andrea Miller, and to be inspired by the work that You the Vote and the Center for Common Ground have been doing together.
I just admitted Andrea.
Yay! So I want to get the show started, and I'm going to start by reading an opening thought, I guess is what I would call it. It's from one of my most recent acquisitions, something that I love and cherish. It is the Blue Notes, an anthology of love, justice, and liberation. And I like this one. It feels appropriate. The Change by Matthew P. Taylor. I can feel the change coming. Like growing pains, I feel the change in my bones, pulling me, stretching me, forming me into the true I am. Can you feel it? The change in our bodies as we adapt, grow, change. The weight shifting and molding it to fit this evolving body that we are in, guided by faith that this too will pass. We can survive this because our ancestors survived. Can you feel them in your DNA? You, a mixture of their particles that was molded to fit your spirit. Change and shift, mold and grow. Yet in some ways, we stay the same. So this evening we've gathered to talk about change, manifesting the change that we want to see, in particular with the midterm elections. And we have a great lineup for you. We have a special guest, Nicole Presley of You the Vote. We have the new liaison to Reclaim the Vote, Linda. And we have our keynote speaker, Andrea Miller. So now that Andrea's joined us, I'm going to ask everyone to graciously put into the chat your name, your state, your preferred pronouns, a land acknowledgement if you like, so that Andrea has a sense of who is in the room with her to receive her wisdom and her guidance on these issues around mobilization for the midterms. And as you're doing that, I'm going to ask Fred to quickly tell us a little bit about what the Democracy Action Team of UUSJ is doing, and then kick it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Pablo. So our Democracy Action Team is essentially engaged in a couple different fronts right now. For legislation, we're focused on the Electoral Count Act, which was the bill that our former president and his lawyers abused in terms of trying to cheat, basically. So the Electoral Count Act is a very important bill. It would fix up a lot of the language in the bill and make it so that it's much harder to take advantage of. It really needs to pass this session of Congress. It's got bipartisan support right now from at least 10 Republicans, so it can make it, and we're worried that if it gets into the next session, it won't pass. So that's what we're doing on the voting front, on the front that's basically legislation. And then we're also connected with You the Vote. And we had a congressional leaders meeting last week where we got together a lot of the You the Vote congressional leader, or congregational leaders, sorry. And we've got two events, this one tonight and another one with Lee Drupman on the 21st of September. So we're trying to help out the You the Vote program. They're our guides through all of this, but voting is so important to us and we really want to help that. So that's what we're up to.
And with that, I invite Nicole to give us her good news.
So excited to be with you tonight. And it's always great to see such familiar faces. And, something that Fred said is like trying to help out the You the Vote program, and you all are the You the Vote program. You are the people who are doing the work, who are making the calls, who are writing the postcards, who are pestering with love their fellow congregants to get involved in this critical election. And I just really feel super excited because we are in a moment in time where we have real battles that we can win. Maybe some of you, like myself, came into 2022 and these midterms like not feeling that great. But the tides are turning. There are so many critical ballot initiatives that are coming out, and case by case, we're seeing that the good ones are winnable, and the bad ones we can beat. If Kansas did it in the middle of a primary, then we can do it in Michigan, we can do it in Arizona. And that is what I'm here very quickly to talk to you about. You hear it first. You the Vote, in maybe 24 hours, is going to officially launch our fall push. It's called Fall Flex for 4 million. We are upping our goals and flexing our power to reach out to 4 million voters across the country, particularly in our focus states and particularly in states that have critical ballot initiatives around voting rights and around abortion access. So real quick, I will share my screen and show you that You the Vote, myself, Jason Hicks, our campaign manager, and even our president, Susan Frederick Gray. Some of us are going to some places, some of us are going to others, but we are all running around the country, hosting actions, hosting on-the-ground mobilizations in your states, in your congregations, to make sure that we can reach folks on the phones and at the doors. So this week coming up, we are launching our Michigan Week of Action from September 14th through the 17th. Then we're running to Georgia, where Susan Frederick Gray is going to meet us in Georgia. Then Kentucky in October, Arizona in October, Florida in October. We're still figuring out that date. And then we are going to end with our final push in Pennsylvania, the hometown of our campaign manager, Jason Hicks, and with our state action network there to make sure that every single ballot initiative gets touched, that our key states, we are on the ground doing grassroots organizing. And the lovely thing is with all of these on the ground events, we are going to make them hybrid. So we are going to be on the ground organizing folks there, and we are going to be inviting you and the national UU community to really throw down to make sure that we can pass the ballot initiatives that are going to be about justice, equity, voting rights, abortion rights, and make sure that we get rid of the voter suppression bills that we also know are on the ballot. So if you just go to uuthevote.org/events, events are being added every single day, and check your inbox if you're subscribed to our You the Vote list to hear the official launch, which is not this one, but because y'all are amazing, you get it first. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as I'm clearing the way for our wonderful speaker, Andrea Miller, I want to flag one other person for the group so that you know who the official UU the Vote liaison to Reclaim Our Vote is. Linda, would you please speak and introduce yourself quickly?
Hello, I'm Linda Hennigan, and along with Bree Magar from New York City, I'm the California person, she's the New York person. We are going to be helping out UU congregations who want to be more deeply involved with Reclaim Our Vote, who maybe need a little bit of assistance figuring out how to run phone banks or get your postcard programs up and running. I'll put my email in the chat, and if there's any follow-up emails from this, I'm sure that it will be included and you'll be able to reach out to me or to Bree. Thanks.
And with that, I want to prepare to introduce Andrea. I want to first say that I met Andrea through our UUSJ collaboration with Faithful Democracy during the previous election, the presidential in 2020. And I've been so impressed with Andrea. She is a force for voting rights, a force for racial justice, an unwavering fighter for the things that we as UUs care about. So many of us as UUs are members of Center for Common Ground, populate their events, and this is truly a partnership of spirit. We have the same goal, the same spirit that motivates our engagement, and we are deeply pleased to have Andrea Miller with us this evening. But for those of you who don't know, Reclaim Our Vote has contacted 14 million voters in 2020. They sent over 9 million handwritten postcards, made 1.7 million phone calls, and sent 2.9 million text messages to voters for voter registration, pledge to vote, and get out the vote work. And we UUs were a big part of that work in 2020, and we continue to be a big part of the work in 2022. So without further ado, I want to introduce the inimitable Andrea Miller, the founding board member of Center for Common Ground, and an inspiration to all of us who pay attention. Andrea.
Well, thank you so very, very much, Pablo and Fred. So great to see you. Nicole, it has been too long. This is really great. Linda, it was this afternoon, but it's really, 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 really great. So I am so excited to be here. How excited am I to be here? Well, I was on vacation and I drove home because the internet at the lake house is absolutely crap. And it was like, nope, I am going to be able to show my presentation, answer questions, and do whatever I need to do because the folks at UU The Vote have been phenomenal partners for years. And I periodically tell people, if it was not for our incredible volunteers, I would just be this geeky woman crunching numbers on my computer. Yes, I'm going to give you a chance to see those numbers because the numbers are pretty darn exciting. Now, I know there were a lot of people as we went into 2022, they were doing the doom and gloom and oh, woe is us. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the history that is going to be made in 2022. And here's the history. And because you are all going to be working on the 2022 election, you are part of that history. In 2022, the South is going to offer up 10 Black U.S. Senate candidates. 10. All right. People are like, what? All right. Justice Sherry Beasley, North Carolina, South Carolina, Crystal Matthews, and yeah, the last time I looked, Tim Scott, we still have to count him as African American. So I will quickly move all the way down to Alabama. Reverend Will Boyd, a wonderful progressive activist. Then when we go down to Florida, we have Val Demings. Then when we swing over to Kentucky, we have Charles Booker. When we hit the great state of Georgia, we've got another Reverend Raphael Warnock. And yeah, we didn't get to kick him out either, but we've got Herschel, please. And then when we go to Louisiana, now Louisiana, they are different. They are not holding their primary election until November 8th. It looks very, very, very much like the candidate Gary Chambers is going to win that primary. And so on December 10th, Louisiana will be fielding a Black Senate candidate. And then there's one more. We don't work in Arkansas. I can never remember that lovely young woman's name, but we have another African-American candidate in Arkansas. So in 2022, this is historic, whether they win or not. The fact that they became the U.S. Senate nominee makes history. And then let's not forget Mandela Barnes running up in Wisconsin, bless his heart. It is going to be an amazing election. Now, hopefully I can share my screen. Oh, I can. Let me show you why I think it's going to be an amazing election. At Center for Common Ground, if there are folks who don't know us that well, we run a lot of campaigns. Why do we call them campaigns? Because we're basically running to win. So you have all been part of the Reclaim Our Vote campaign, where we want to make certain that we spread civil rights and justice throughout the voter suppression states. Where are most of the voter suppression states? Oh, they're in the South, and then you go around the corner in Florida, and then you go to Texas, and then you come up into Arizona. So those are the voter suppression states. Our Students for Justice is our internship program. We have rewrapped our RVG, the Ruthless Vote Getter, and right now she is in South Carolina. We will again be investing in billboards just like we did in 2020, because so much of the South is rural. And then we've got a little map up there. And on that little map are where we have democracy centers. What's a democracy center? Well, it's a place in a local community where 55% or more of the population of that community has stopped voting. So we invest in those communities because these are new votes. If we can add those votes to the votes we already have, this is how we can get the numbers to win an election. So just like the other side has community centers, we have democracy centers. They're nonpartisan. They don't tell people who to vote for, but they help people identify what's a problem in the community that we want to fix. And then when they're not in election season, they work with people in that community on fixing the problem. All right, now, what's our mission? Our mission is really simplistic. We want to educate and empower underrepresented voters who live in voter suppression states to engage in elections and advocate for their, I said right to vote, I should have said ability to vote. Together, we can build a democracy that prioritizes the voices of all people, and all means all, y'all, not just some. Center for Common Ground is a community of color-led organization. So my board co-chairs are Reverend Rodney Sadler, who himself lives in North Carolina, Dr. Gabby Lemus. Our inventor is Deepak Puri, a retired Google engineer who periodically threatens to go back to work so that he can get a rest. And then there's me. And then there is Katie, who runs Vote Equality. So it was already mentioned in 2020, this is what you did. 14 million voters contacted. So this is a midterm election. It originally looked as though we were not going to get the volunteers, but now that people have started really looking at what's going on, we are seeing a lot more volunteers coming in. I'm not going to worry about that slide. There you are, the Unitarian Universalist, the UU the Vote campaign. Yay. Along with some of our other partners. I always love listing Faithful Democracy because Faithful Democracy, it's on the advocacy side of where we work. And now this is what we're going to be doing in 2022. And I'm showing you the numbers. Now, the percentage BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, these are registered voters. So in other words, if they held the election tomorrow, these folks would be able to go and vote in it. All right, now I want you to notice Florida. Florida is already a majority minority voting, registered voting population state. Look at Alabama, and people just won't get excited about Alabama. They're 42% BIPOC, and Reverend Will Boyd is one heck of a candidate. We've got North Carolina. Justice Sherry Beasley is running a very, very good race. Louisiana looks like we're going to have Gary Chambers. Louisiana is a majority minority state. And then in South Carolina, we've got Crystal and Timmy. Now, there are 3 majority minority states. Texas is also a majority minority state. Now, in Texas, we have a governor's race rather than a Senate race. So our goal in 2022 is we want to reach out to 17 million BIPOC voters. We're going to do a lot of it through text messaging, and we're going to be on phone calling voters. We are going to send more than 2.5 million postcards. We have already sent 2.1 million postcards, counting the primary and the general. We are probably in this midterm going to be closer to 3.5 million postcards to voters. I always like to make sure people understand how impactful postcards are, because every once in a while you see these weird things, oh, postcards don't work. And like anything, it depends on a lot of variables. Number one, what image is on the postcard? Number two, what message is on the postcard? And number three, who was your target audience? So if you are sending postcards to voters who vote all the time and you're asking them for money, yeah, your postcard campaign might not be that successful. But if you are sending postcards to voters who pretty much never hear from anybody else, your postcard may be enough to get those voters to come out and vote. The first example is Petersburg, Virginia, 2021. All right, none of us were happy about the result of that election. We will do a lot better this year and in 2023. But what we found with Petersburg we had 6,500 people where we did not have a phone number. That means we weren't calling them, nor were we going to text them. All we had was an address. Petersburg is due south of Virginia. It is a very historic African American city, but it's fallen on hard economic times. So people weren't going to be likely to go and knock doors in Petersburg. So we did postcards. Now, out of those 6,500 people who got a postcard, 43% of them showed up and voted in 2021. And you can see bit.ly/ROV results. We have this graphic along with a graphic and more details regarding our phone banking work as to how effective we are. Again, we are reaching out in 2022 to Black voters who did not vote in the 2018 midterms, but are still able to vote. So again, there's a lot of voters out there in the universe that are 1 for 3 or presidential only voters. We are going to be working to get them to show up in the midterms. Now, this is what we've done so far with postcarding. Out of 3.3 million addresses, we've assigned, actually, these numbers, the assigned number is bigger. It's probably closer to 1.3 million now than it is 1 million. And these are the dates where we're mailing the postcards. Now, we're mailing Virginia first because Virginia right now has 45 days of early voting. We start voting in Virginia for the November general on September 23rd. So I will have to remember that I've already voted because I normally show up to vote on either the 23rd or the 24th. Normally, I'm the first 100 people that votes in my county. All right, now, as I said, we're going to be texting a lot of voters. We've invested in 3 texting platforms: Outreach, Circle, Spoke, Fast, P2P. We are probably going to do 95% of our texting in Outreach, Circle, and Spoke because of speed, number of people who know how to use it, and the ease of training. And then phone banking. Our phone banks are currently up right now for Virginia, and they're also up for Georgia. We brought the Georgia phone banks up early. North Carolina will come up October 5th. Arizona will be right behind North Carolina. Florida will be October 12th. Alabama will be later because Alabama does not have early voting. All right, so yep, there's the make calls now. Oh, was that? Oh, that was texting. There we go. I thought I had corrected that. Here are phone banks. So roughly the same date. And I noticed we have people from a lot of different states. Every state in the country needs poll workers. So if you would go to powerthepolls.org and look and see, do they need poll workers anywhere in your state, and sign up. I didn't notice anybody in Nevada. The state of Nevada needs thousands of poll workers. as we speak. So that's my presentation. I wanted you to see where we are. Yes, there will be texting and phone banks for texting. Yes. As far as I'm concerned, you can use the recording. We normally have a meeting every Thursday night. We will start using our Thursday night meetings. Last Thursday was Mobilization Georgia. I'm on vacation this Thursday, so this Thursday will be Power to the Polls. We needed to become a poll worker, but then we will be doing Mobilization Texas, Mobilization Florida, for all of our different states, letting you know when you can plug in, how you can plug in, and everything. Now, one of the things I wanted to tell you is a very, very exciting development in Georgia, Virginia, and Alabama. In 2020, the Atlanta NAACP formed something that they called Team Unity. Team Unity was the Atlanta NAACP and 19 other NAACP chapters in the Black Belt. They had Black Voters Matter, they had the Divine Nine, the Black fraternities and sororities, and Center for Common Ground. We provided their digital backbone, meaning we provided the voter file, the texting platform, the phone banking platform, the postcard addresses. Well, this year, Team Unity Georgia has expanded so that it's 58 counties. These folks are serious. We are working together to ensure that no two groups are working in exactly the same place. They also have brought on a faith organization that is bringing 500 churches with it. Now, Alabama is run by the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. When they heard about what they were doing in Georgia, and they were like, well, we know other fraternity and sorority organizations. There's a Black Voters Matter here in Alabama. Alabama started doing the same thing. So what we are seeing now in 2022 is we are seeing states with these local democracy centers led by trusted community leaders that are working with people who normally don't vote. These folks are starting to volunteer. They are recruiting other people. They are living the goal of a democracy center's job is to convert inconsistent voters to voting rights activists. And Virginia was not about to be outdone by Alabama or Georgia. So Virginia said, we are going to form a regional democracy center. And our region is going to be the 16 counties of Northern Virginia. So we are beginning to see on the ground local groups stepping up and saying, let's get this thing organized. So what we've put together for Team Unity Georgia, for Nova Partners, and we'll be building for Alabama doesn't have a name yet, or whatever they decide to call Alabama, is we show how many Black voters are there in all the counties where they're going to work, what percentage voted in 2020, what percentage did not vote in 2020. That's our opportunity. And the real opportunity is who didn't vote in 2018. And then in every one of those counties, we drill down and get to the precinct level and show who did not vote at the precinct level, so that when we do canvassing and start knocking on doors, we're going to be knocking on doors that are really going to count. So thank you very much. I'm Movement Lab's fiscal sponsor. I've known Yoni since before Yoni knew to be Yoni. So I'm just glancing at that. So yes. So yay. All right. Oh, good. 8:10. Look at that. We are ready for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's always a privilege and an honor to learn from you. And wow, that presentation knocked my socks off. The impact that you were and your team were able to lead and we were able to be a part of. So I'm gonna ask you a softball question, and then I'm gonna kick it over to Fred to ask a question, and then Fred and I are gonna try and manage questions from the chat. But I want to remind you, this is a live event and we are recording. So those who are brave and raise their electronic hands, your questions will be appreciated. So the first softball question is, does Reclaim Our Vote collaborate with Vote Forward?
No, we do not. And the reason we do not is we work in different states and we work with an entirely different population. We, according to my board, remember, purely underrepresented voters in voter suppression states. So in presidential years where we have more volunteers, our voters are Black, they're Indigenous, they're Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and Hispanic. This year, right now, in most areas, they're predominantly Black. Also, there is a cultural reason we don't work with Vote Forward. Vote Forward sends letters. Now, as a Black American who grew up in a Black household, I know that when many families of a certain age receive a letter, it's not a check and it's not a bill. It goes on the counter or the desk in the pile. If after 2 months, nobody's called about it and the pile is starting to fall on the floor periodically, the whole pile goes in the garbage. We use postcards so that, number one, we have a racially uplifting, culturally motivating image, and people can see what the message is immediately. We will never send letters in an envelope.
Thank you, Andrea. Next question goes to Fred and then Dee.
Andrea, you've got so much going on. I'm really impressed as well. You're amazing. I do have a question. I mean, we're pretty clear on how to connect with you on postcards and text banking and phone banking. If people want to work with your local groups, how should they get in touch with them?
If people want to work with our local groups, we don't have a great answer to that tonight. The best thing to do really is get in touch with me, and I will look at what states center, or have such a long email address. When I'm talking, it takes me a moment to write it. We've got 3 democracy centers that are ours in Georgia, but we have 58 that belong to the NAACP. So we may end up in some states putting you with a partner as opposed to having you work directly with us, knowing that we are building the canvassing operation for those partners.
Great.
So we're going to need to see where are people trying to be. And then we'll go, all right, we're getting a lot of people who want to volunteer in probably Georgia and probably Virginia, because we're going to have a lot of opportunity in Northern Virginia. We will train you on our canvassing app and get you started with the Nova Regional Democracy Center. The other states, it depends on where you want to work, which is going to be the best partner.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Next in the queue is D, but I just want to confirm that as I understand it, anything we do counts with you guys counts towards our good trouble goals. So
Yes.
just so everybody in the audience knows, you collaborate with Andrea and her crew, and you make Nicole and her crew very happy.
And
Next goes to-
and it is marvelous, marvelous, good trouble.
D. You're on mute, D.
The head of Zoom says that he forgets to unmute himself sometimes, which made me feel better. I agree with Fred, Andrea. I don't know how you keep all that straight. It's just fabulous. So I live in Northern Virginia, but my question isn't state specific. I just keep hearing about how young people really don't feel like they're going to vote. And I hear that over and over and over again. And I feel like they're really critical. And I'm just wondering if there are any ways that we plan to target younger voters or university students to make sure they're registered and to get them to the polls.
Really, really, really great question. When we look at the 18 to 24-year-old vote, when we're looking at a presidential year, about 25% of them vote. When we look at a midterm year, we normally see somewhere between 9 and maybe 20% turnout among 18 to 24-year-old voters. So when we're looking at voters who did not vote in 2018, a lot of them are going to be in that 18, now they're probably 18 to 30 range. Now, we got help by a lot of the laws in a number of our states where they are trying to completely end abortion access. That is an issue that is of great concern to young voters, be they male or female. We were amazed at how well that resonated even in rural Georgia. So they are looking at this, as we do, as major, major, major government increase. And this is an overturning of something that, if you are 18 to 24, has been in existence your entire life. And now you are about to, in theory, lose it. So we have that. And then the other thing is a number of really good things that impact young people. The rolling over of hundreds of millions of dollars of student debt. People are looking at that and they're going, do we want to see things like this continue? Maybe we need to go and vote. One of the other things that we are working on in many, many states is we've partnered with Rideshare to Vote So we are trying to up our game, making sure that we have ways of getting people to the polls. So yes, it is a huge problem. We will be texting the younger voters in some states
Of course.
rather than sending them postcards, because for a lot of young people, postcards are just, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't get it. Whereas voters 40 and older will appreciate it.
Right. Thank you.
Pablo, let me just interrupt briefly. In Massachusetts, we've got a program that we're just starting called Ask Your College. And it's a volunteer program that helps you encourage the colleges you're connected with to register more of their students. So you basically connect with, you send a letter to the college presidents and to other people who are involved in their voting programs, and they then get information on how to register more students. And I put the information in the chat. If you send an email to ayc@fcleadership.org with the names of colleges you're connected with, they will send you back letters that you can mail to the colleges.
And that's important because so many universities like to sidestep the issue of registering their students. Not all, but so many.
Well, this is a really good program, so I hope you play.
And Team Unity Nova partners in the Alabama Democracy Centers, because they are Divine Nine or have Divine Nine members, all Divine Nine groups. Part of their charter is that they will do voter registration on campus, and they will assist their students in get out the vote.
Robert.
Yes, good evening, Andrea. I love
Hey,
your
Robert.
I love your story about the pile of letters. I have mine right on the table right here.
Don't we all?
I have a question for you. It's a judgment call. In Louisiana, we have two candidates that can challenge Senator Foghorn Kennedy. And the other one is more of a centrist, like our governor. And I'm wondering, I believe he would appeal to the people in the country more, because these are the people that are rather conservative here, as you know. What do you think is the best strategy? To support Chambers or to go with the...
Support Chambers, because young people love him.
You think?
They will show up to vote for Gary Chambers because Gary Chambers is cool and speaks to them.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any other electronic raised hands, so I'm wondering if, Fred, you found a good question in the chat. There are so many, to be honest, it's a little hard to keep up with. There is a question about how...
I was seeing a great question from Timothy Norton. Are there opportunities for group phone banking between UU congregations and other organizations? We do phone bank training every Tuesday and Thursday. Any group of 5 or more people can request a custom class. And UU the Vote, you are one of the volunteer organizations in our drop down. So we track all calls made by volunteers that are Unitarian Universalists. So yes, there are tremendous opportunities if that's what you want to do. Yes. We can help you get that event on Mobilize, so that if there are other UUs out there on Mobilize, they're like, oh my gosh, there's a UU event. We want to be a part of that. Yes.
And Robin is asking an interesting question. How do we know that rural/first-time/infrequent voters have a progressive candidate option, since so many areas have uncontested conservative candidates, especially in local elections?
And you are very correct. In many states, they do not have an option, but in states this year, or US Senate. Arkansas normally does not have any progressive-ish options at all, but they do have a statewide candidate. Georgia has one. Alabama has one. Alabama in Reverend Will Boyd. Reverend Will Boyd is a voting rights, Medicare for all, let's legalize marijuana and bank it marijuana justice candidate all day long. So there are some very, very progressive candidates and candidates of color running statewide. Now, when it gets down into state house and state Senate seats, we are not seeing the really uber progressive candidates. We're seeing some, but we're not seeing them in the numbers that we're seeing them in unusual places at the state level. Gary Chambers in Louisiana is, how did one of my young people put it, a stone cold progressive. They threw in some other words, which I'm not going to say to you, but it was, youth speak for, if we could vote for this guy, we love him.
Couple of things, Pablo. One person asked if writing to swing states was a partisan issue, and I can assure you it's not.
It becomes partisan if you ask people to vote for a Democrat. We never even mention the candidate's name. We may mention the office, or in some states, we remind people what they're voting for, so that is on the forefront of their mind when they're thinking about voting.
Perfect. And one of the questions earlier was, what's the most effective way to reach voters? Texting, postcards, phone calls?
Well, now remember, if we don't have a phone number and all we've got is an address, then the postcard is a great way to go. We are in Alabama postcarding voters over the age of 40, voters who will really appreciate postcards. In other states, we're postcarding Black voters who did not vote in 2018, and we are pushing voters to early vote. When the Atlanta NAACP did a survey in 2021 of 1,000 voters who did not vote in 2020, there were three main reasons given. Reason number one, I didn't know where the voting was. So we make sure that any voter who gets a postcard, phone call, or a text message from us knows where they can find the voting. We give them a web link, and we give them the phone number of their local registrar in the event they don't have the internet. Because a lot of rural areas, they don't have the internet. A lot of urban areas where they have the internet, people just can't afford it, so they're not on it. How do we know putting the phone number for those registrars work? I go by the number of registrars who want to sue me, beat me up, and do various other things because they are getting all these phone calls. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's your job. It's your job to help voters vote. So you go do your job. So that's very impactful. Young people like texting. And again, what is great about texting is when we talk to people about their voting plan, do they want to early vote? Do they want to vote by mail? Do they want to vote on election day? We can send them all that information customized to their county. Center for Common Ground volunteers call every phone number that appears on any postcard, text message, or phone bank to make certain that the person who is answering that phone is in an elections capacity and is prepared to answer questions about elections. Some smaller rural counties do not have a separate elections department. They have someone in the county tax department who's tasked with that requirement.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So now I want to honor your time and I want to try and end almost on time. And as my very last question to you, I want to ask, one of the key reasons you should be involved in this midterm election effort is because we have to develop the muscle memory that's going to be needed in the next election. So can you say even 2 minutes about how the midterms is going to queue up the needed engagement for the next presidential? Because that, in my mind, is the big frame, and that is the subject, as part of the subject of our next speaker in the series conversation, Lee Drutman, next week. So please give us your sense of what how the mobilization this election links to the mobilization for the next election.
My mentor, Dr. William Ferguson Reed, put it this way: every election is a dress rehearsal for the next election. So for most people, the next election after the 2022 one will basically be the presidential in 2024. And either we go into that election jazzed about our opportunity and what we want to do to preserve democracy and for this country, or we go in and we're like, oh, elections are so much work. They are. For me, I live in Virginia. My presidential in Virginia will be 2023, when I have to A, take back the Virginia House, and B, get ready to start taking down the Virginia governor who may run for president as early as 2024. So every election is a dress rehearsal for the next one. We want to hone our skills on this election even more than we did on 2020. It is much easier to turn people out for a presidential than a midterm. If we do as good a job as I believe we can, we will go into 2024 and democracy will be burning bright because of the effort that we made.
Thank you so much, Andrea. We feel it is a blessing to have discovered you through Faithful Democracy and to count you as an ally in our struggle for voting rights and for an inclusive democracy. And we hope that you count us as your dear allies in that struggle as well. And with that, I want to invite folks to return to your voter mobilization work. Look at those spreadsheets, do whatever you have to do to get ready for the next day or this weekend. I'm going to linger to answer questions about UUSJ and anything else in that sort of coffee hour vibe. But we have hit the final moment of our presentation and event this evening. And we want to wish everyone Godspeed, good luck in doing the voter mobilization work that needs to be done.
And a
Thank you so much,
special
Lee.